This video is for my interpersonal communication class over at Washtenaw Community College. This is Myron Covington, and I will be narrating for the next 15 or so minutes. We will be discussing interpersonal communication in regards to listening. I have provided the supplemental PowerPoint for you. We'll pull it up here. I'll be navigating from this for the purposes of our class, and so hopefully you can follow along. It is posted on Blackboard for you to take a look at. All right, so here we go. Very important chapter that we have, and I'll also post some supplemental videos. And for those of you all who are watching non-academically, I hope you find this information to be beneficial for your everyday, regular lives, if you will. Okay? So let's take a look. In this chapter, we're going to talk about the 5 stages of listening and ways that you can increase your listening accuracy. We'll look at the 4 major barriers to effective listening. There are 4 major things that hinder or hurt us from being able to listen effectively. We'll look at the 4 styles of listening, and we'll talk about the major cultural and gender differences found in listening and how they influence all of us. Okay? So the 5 stages of listening, and I do have a subsequent or in slides that follow more specific details. And so these are what we call the 5 stages of listening. I would star this slide. And for the purposes, we are using DeVito. This is through Pearson Education. This is Joseph DeVito, who's out of New York. He does a great job of laying all of these theories and concepts out. And so for the purposes of this, with the whole coronavirus, I'm using this to supplement to help our students out, being that we don't meet face to face. Okay? So the 5 stages of listening. You have receiving, which you all are doing right now. Understanding, after this video is done, how do you make understanding? Remembering, when you get tested. Evaluating, and responding. So receiving is hearing and attending. Understanding is learning or deciphering the meaning. Okay, so if you were to see someone who had tattoos, you're trying to make sense of why does he or she have that type of tattoo, etc. Remembering is recalling and retaining the information. Evaluating is judging and criticizing. And lastly, responding, answering, giving feedback. So at the receiving stage, this is where speakers send both verbal and nonverbal messages together. When you receive a message more effectively, you want to focus attention and eliminate interruptions and avoid assumptions. I want you to focus on those last 2 right here. Eliminating interruptions, where you see the cursor, and avoid assumptions. Oftentimes we make assumptions about someone, about who they are, based off of what we see or the way that they talk, okay? So for example, if you were to hear a Southerner and they said, "Hey, we're fixing to go to the mall today." Unfortunately, societally, sometimes we think that Southerners may not be as intellectual or smart as other regions. And so when you hear a British accent, and you see it all over TV today, so you think you can dance or any of these shows, they always have some type of individual who has a British accent. And what do we hear when we hear someone across the pond? Typically you think, oh, more articulate, they're smarter, and it's crazy how when we receive these messages, those things happen. I want to preface too, you may hear some external noise in the background. We have 2 boys and a daughter, so if they're running up and down the stairs, please forgive that. So let's look at improving communication between people and without hearing disorders. First off, set up a comfortable context, avoid overlapping speech, and use common terms. Let's take a look at understanding, okay? And for understanding, you want to consider the speaker's point of view, rephrase and paraphrase, okay, and ask questions. And, oftentimes we don't want to understand. We just want to believe what we want to believe because we are who we are. However, I caution and I push you to try to get someone, when you want to understand someone, you want to ask questions in terms of the why, okay? Don't assume that that person is automatically racist, that person automatically is a thug. Consider asking questions so you have a better understanding of who they are. When we look at the 3rd stage, remembering, effective listening involves the ability to recall details. We have short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory, more specifically, is dealing with the memory you use, say, to remember a phone number, just enough to write it down. How many of y'all right now can remember and tell me 10 phone numbers? Now, those of us who are maybe older, maybe we'll say 40 and above, perhaps 50 and above, you knew those numbers, right? Some of us were like, I don't even know my mom or dad's number or my boyfriend or girlfriend. Short-term memory has changed over the years, okay? Long-term memory, more specifically, is unlimited. To facilitate the passage of information from short to long-term, there are a lot of suggestions that you can do. Focus on central ideas, organize and categorize, unite old and new, and repeat names of key concepts. I can tell you every one of my grammar school teachers' names, all the way from preschool all the way to fifth grade. Once it gets into middle school, a little bit different because you had several teachers, but I could tell you quite a few. How is your long-term memory versus short-term memory? Okay. So I want you to star this, false memory syndrome. And real quickly, this is a term that refers to a phenomenon in which you remember past experiences that never really happened. Sometimes these false memories are implanted by therapists and interviewers whose persistent questioning over a period of time can create such a realistic scenario that you come to believe these things that they never actually really occurred. So let's look at evaluating, judging messages in some way. Some of you all are evaluating our commander-in-chief, our president right now with the coronavirus. Some of you all are very happy with how him and his team have managed it. Some of you all are very, very unhappy. I push whatever, and we're not making this political. We're just using relevant, Cub. I like to use relevant information. How do you evaluate that message? Stop for one moment, and I'm not yelling at you or coming at you sideways. Why are you evaluating the message that you are? I'll be honest, in one of my classes, okay, I had a student who wore a mask the entire class period. So I could tell non-verbally people were reading or evaluating that message in different ways, okay? And that student came up and said, hey, I just don't want to get, I'm kind of ill and I don't want to kind of get other people ill. So when you judge a message in some way, avoid evaluating until you understand the speaker's point of view. Assume. How hard is this for a lot of us? Why can't you assume someone is a person of goodwill? Stop it for a moment. Why can't you assume someone is of goodwill? Whether it's someone you work with, a significant other, or your romantic partner. And then you want to distinguish facts from opinions, okay? So that can be very, very difficult to do, right? When we look at fact from opinion, okay, you want to be able, and I want, first off, can you tell me what it is, okay? Can you tell me what fact or opinion is, okay? And more specifically, fact can be proven. So if I was to say, what is the weather? You ask Siri, how warm is it outside? And they tell you the exact temperature. That's a fact, okay? Opinions or inferences, okay, are emotionally based, okay? So I may say that Michigan is the best state ever, or I love Michigan State football, basketball, gymnastics, or such and such movie was the absolute best movie, okay? Opinions are purely emotional. So let's look at responding. And responding occurs in two forms. Responses made while someone is talking and responses made after the speaker has stopped talking, okay? And so we all respond in different ways. Some of you all, and I get it, you're stressed out right now. And I want to be very sensitive because I know this is hard for a lot of us. I'm working from home and have 3 kids. It's almost lunchtime soon, but dealing with that. How do you respond to the situation, okay? And then that kind of wraps up those stages of listening. So let's talk about barriers or things that hurt us from listening effectively, okay? Well, we have physical and mental distractions. Physical barriers, including hearing impairment, noisy environment, or loud music. In the background, you can hear I have Maddie's in a swing, she's asleep. The boys are upstairs. They should have did we'll make sure they did their lessons for the day because mom and dad don't play that, but they're too quiet upstairs. After this video, I'm going to have to check in and see what's going on with them. But noisy environment or loud music, okay? Some of you will allow, for example, in my household, the wife hates when the microwave keeps beeping and it's telling you your food's ready. Same thing with the washer and dryer. For me, that doesn't bother me, but it absolutely gets the missus to go kind of crazy. So that could be a distraction. Mental distractions could also be distracting thoughts. Some of you all are really, really worried with what's going on with coronavirus, and rightfully so. Those are mental distractions. Some of you are distracted because you had I don't know how you had a date last night or the other day, but you had a date and you can't stop thinking about her or him. You are just enthralled with that experience that you just had. So these are called distractions, and these hurt hurt our ability to listen effectively. The second one is biases and prejudices. This is where you hear what the speaker is saying through stereotypes. And this occurs in a wide variety of situations. It definitely happens. And in biased or prejudiced listening, you hear what the speaker is saying through stereotypes. This type of listening occurs when you listen differently to a person because of his or her race, affectional orientation, age, gender, when the characteristics are irrelevant to the message. So some of you all use this term boomer, which is, we typically look at that in terms of being negative to baby boomer population. And so why do you judge someone differently in terms of that? Okay, and this can happen for a lot of reasons. Lack of appropriate focus. Focusing on what a person is saying is obviously necessary for effective listening. For example, listeners often get lost because they focus on irrelevancies, say an especially vivid example that conjures up old memories. So stay focused on the main ideas when you're listening to someone and wait until the speaker has finished before formulating a response. And lastly, premature judgment. This gets a lot of us assuming you know what the speaker is going to say and drawing conclusions or judgments on incomplete evidence. I remember working with a student before and as well as employees, and sometimes you think that someone can do the job and can't do the job, especially if you have 65 or 70 employees and whatnot. And how many times have you been wrong about making a judgment about someone? So you want to be careful with premature judgment. This can get you in trouble a little bit. So the four barriers discussed here are certainly not the only ones that get in the way of effective listening. Can you identify any other barriers as well? So we'll get rid of the styles. I want to focus on polite listening though, because you don't need all of the other information. This is often thought of as an exclusive function of speaker. This may be signaled through listening and supporting speaker's positive and negative face. So polite listening is just, turn off that phone, turn off the TV, the Xbox, the Nintendo Switch, and focus your attention to the individual. So avoid interrupting them, give supportive listening cues, show empathy, maintain eye contact, and give positive feedback. Critical listening. When we look at critical listening too as well, exercise critical evaluation or judgment. Keep an open mind with what's going on with coronavirus. Keep an open mind, whether you support our president or not. Keep an open mind. Stop stressing yourself out. Recognize your own biases, combat the tendency to sharpen, and watch out for language fallacies, okay? Some of y'all believe everything that you hear on TV because such and such said it. Well, just because such and such said it does not mean that it's necessarily correct. And then we have active listening or inactive listening. One of the most important communication skills, check for understanding, stimulate the speaker to explore feelings of thoughts. You always want to be active when you're listening. Passive is just, and a lot of people think, I hear people oftentimes say, oh, I hear you. That's the wrong thing to say. You want to say, I'm listening to you. Hearing is passive. It doesn't take much energy to hear something. Listening is so hard to do. It's very difficult, and it requires the individual to be conscious and fully engaged. So take away what you heard before. Hearing and listening are different. So the next time you want to tell someone, hey, I hear you, don't say that. Say, hey, I'm listening to you, because listening is active. Okay? Let's look at culture and listening as we get ready to wrap up here shortly. The culture in which you were raised will influence your listening by idiolect or speech and language, direct and indirect speech, accents, nonverbal differences, and feedback. Okay? Gender and listening. We have rapport and report talk. This is very, very important, and I'm going through this because I have less than 2 minutes left to get this posted for you because it cuts off at 15 minutes. When you look at gender and listening, men and women learn different styles of listening, and I don't mean to put men and women into separate boxes, but we see some compelling research out there that shows rapport versus report talk. Real quick, where you see this rapport talk, this is synonymous with most women, not all. Rapport talk is gaining a connection with someone, digging deeper. Report talk is just what it says. It's reporting what happened. Here's a quick example. If I got home from work and my wife asked me, hey, Mai, how was your work today? And I said it like this. Good. What'd you have for lunch? A sandwich. What are we doing later tonight? I don't know. Well, you can tell that's reporting. However, let's rewind it and do the same scenario. Hey, hon, how was work today? Oh, it was great. We studied. I lectured on listening. What'd you have for lunch? Oh, I had a turkey sandwich from Subway. It was awesome. It was fantastic. Hey, what are we doing tonight? Hey, well, we can go see a movie. Real quick, notice the difference, right? Rapport is that deepening connection. Rapport is simple. There are unique circumstances where both of those can be very, very important, but for the purposes, you should be able to tell which one is more appropriate. And that will conclude this week's video. I appreciate all of you all for listening. I hope that you all are doing well out there, and please stay tuned in the future for our next video for next week. Have a good one.